Hello everyone, this is a video about the psychic visions for what is coming up in July 2025. So July 2025 is actually a month that I've been talking about on my Patreon for at least a year, actually, since last year. It's just a very charged month, and I've basically come to this conclusion mostly off of doing crypto coin predictions on my Patreon page and just seeing a pattern where July is a big month. But for this year, I was seeing, well, in the past, I had seen a big rise and a big fall, but as time moves along, things shift. The time or the future is malleable, of course. This is partly why people get future predictions so that they can be prepared for what's coming and they can shift how it plays out. I'll explain a little bit here real quick for those who don't understand this. The future is not entirely set in stone, but some things can be more baked in than other things. Many times we come into our lifetimes with certain things pre-programmed into our life to experience, but the exact way in which it plays out can shift and we can change that, and we have a little bit of free will about how these things happen. The timing isn't always going to be exact either. You may have a predetermined destiny coming into a certain life that you will experience a certain thing within your lifetime, but that situation, that experience of that happening could happen early on in your life, or it could happen much further later down the road, depending on your free will and how you choose to live your life. So with that understood, how time works, it's not quite as predetermined as people think, but there are things that are sort of baked in. Anyways, with that understanding, how July has manifested has shifted a little bit, but regardless, there's a lot of really charged energy for July. And I'll get to the Bitcoin prediction later. First of all, I just want to say this month is a month where the truth is really bleeding out. And, in some way, we want to think that we can handle the ultimate truth of everything all at once, but realistically, humanity is not able to handle all the truth coming out all at once. And so that's why this long process we've been going through for a very long time now of truths becoming more and more apparent is happening at a rate at which we can handle for the vibration of being in our physical bodies without it causing absolute chaos. I know you think that you can handle the ultimate truth of everything, but realistically, your entire worldview would flip, your illusions of what really matters, your priorities, your entire perspective of who you are being flipped upside down over and over and over and over and over is going to have a huge psychological effect on you. So that's why we are getting little bits at a time. Regardless, this month is going to be a big month where we are going to be experiencing more of kind of like the heart-centered truth coming out. The things that we have been wanting to express as our authentic self, but haven't really felt like we were able to, like sort of this feeling of being held back a little bit, even by ourselves, by our own programming. That is shifting a lot in the month of July, and so we will be much more authentic in general. But I want to get to the stuff that people are really interested in hearing, which is what's really going on in the world. And there's a lot going on in the world right now, especially for July and August as well. Those are just two big months. June was also charged, but July is kind of like, ironically, the 4th of July with the fireworks seems to be a great metaphor for July. I will be talking about the visions that I see for the future of the US and, of course, Bitcoin and some general advice. So let's go ahead and get into this. And first of all, I'm going to mention a little bit about last month because it's it's kind of building up a lot of pressure, as you probably know if you're paying attention to the news. But last month, in my prediction video, I saw a scene. I described a scene with people running. There was chaos on the streets of the US in particular, and an explosion in the sky. And I said that it would either be in Times Square specifically, or some similar city that kind of resembles Times Square. Turns out that this was actually an event, and I called the video an unexpected event because at the time of making that video, nobody foresaw that situation happening with all the protests, and some call some of it riots as well. But it turns out that this happened in many cities across the US, not just Times Square, which explains why I kind of saw Times Square, but I got the sense that it could be other places as well. And there were literally fireworks being shot off into the sky, which is why I was seeing explosions in the sky. Donald Trump was celebrating, I guess, his birthday and the U.S. kind of at the same time, depending on your perspective on that. It did get pretty crazy, as I predicted. Someone was shot and killed in all of this. There was also a video of a police officer. Well, it was actually a news reporter reporting the news, and a police officer turned and shot them with a rubber bullet as they were filming. And this was more so before the, No Kings protest, but there were the LA riots that broke out shortly after I made the prediction about this situation, which was then followed by the No Kings protest, which was similar, kind of like a continuation. They're kind of two different things, but sort of the same thing, you could say, on some level. I also saw fires. There's been an uptick in fires, but I also saw fires associated with this event, and there were a lot of cars lit on fire. There were apparently 2 Democrat politicians that were killed by someone who had a list of political people they were trying to kill. That person was taken down. But there's a lot of crazy stuff. This all happened in the first half of the month, and the second half of the month has been crazy too, but I said that the first half would be particularly crazy and it would kind of calm down a little bit, at least for the US, maybe not for what's going on in the Middle East, but for the US it was crazier in the first half. And apparently within all of US history, during, I believe it was the No Kings protest, that was the most amount of people protesting in one day in all of US history. So there we go. Unexpected event. That's what I named the video last month for the June prediction. It is currently June 28th as of recording this right now, and this is the prediction for July, of course. But I'm just going over June first. So yeah, that was the unforeseen event. Also, last month I said there would be a World War III scare, or some sort of scare that would be like doomsday type of vibe for the US in particular, associated with that whole situation. And of course it was sort of associated with Donald Trump and his actions, in the sense that it was kind of linked together, but it was also kind of a separate event that was happening in the Middle East as well. So I also predicted that there would be this scare that would be looming over people in the US, but that it would, like an existential fear of being wiped out or something big like that. And we did see that happen in the prediction I said that it would be a quick scare and then it would go away and nothing horrible would happen from it. So that could also be a prediction in the works, because there's a lot of people saying we're gonna get attacked or bombed or whatever. I don't particularly see that right now, at least not for at the moment. Moving into July, there could be some more dangers, but I don't particularly see it being an existential threat to the U.S. as a whole. Of course, there's always people being killed. There's always horrible things happening. I do see some things happening in the U.S., but I don't see the U.S. being taken down or it being a major situation that brings down the U.S. or is like an actual existential threat. Although it may feel like that again, we may have another temporary experience where we feel that the U.S. may be going down, but I don't think it's going to be as big of a deal as it seems. It's more kind of like a scare tactic, which leads me into the next vision that I was seeing for July. And when I was tuning into July, what I was being shown was big towers in major cities. This kind of reminded me of the Twin Towers during the 9/11 attack, although I don't think it's going to be quite that situation. But I was kind of reminded of that with this vision. But I was seeing more of a symbolic darkness that was just going over the city, and it was as if things were kind of shutting down. This felt more like it had to do with the business sector of the U.S. and less of an effect on individuals, and it's kind of like a scare that's more kind of symbolic and not directly going to influence people as much as they may think. But I did see a vision of an evil eye, etheric evil eye, hovering over the city, kind of like in The Lord of the Rings. So this was a little concerning. And many times I get things in symbols. This is very symbolic, of course. I don't necessarily know exactly what this is going to be, but if you have any thoughts, you can always leave your thoughts in the comment section and share what you believe this may be about. But when I asked more about this, I got the sense that Donald Trump, this may be a little political, and again, people always think that I'm taking sides. When I see something good for Donald Trump, they think I'm pro-Trump. When I see something bad for Trump, they think I'm anti-Trump. It's really not about that. This is just what was coming through. So just take it for what it is. Don't try and attach implications that I'm not actually implying. But anyways, I saw Donald Trump not liking this situation and not being part of this. This felt as though there was some sort of secret, though, that he knew about that he had to keep his mouth shut about. So it's as if he was holding a secret within a group of people that he's associated with, and in some way the whole house of cards would come down if he was to expose them, because in some way he stands within the same house of cards, so to speak. In other words, he has secret alliances which would be exposed, and that's specifically what was coming through. His alliances would basically, even though he disagrees with what they're doing, he's still aligned with them in other ways, and so if he exposes them, then they will expose him. And so, as I've said many times, and you can go back and watch my previous videos where I talk about this, or even on my Patreon where I've done many readings, even blind readings where I didn't know I was reading Donald Trump, but I found out later that that's who I was reading in a remote viewing protocol sort of way, where you are blind to the target. I've come to this conclusion many, many times over and over, and I'll explain it again for those who are new here, that Donald Trump it's not so black and white, things are not so good versus evil. It's more that there is what people refer to as the deep state sometimes, which is just the shadow government, you could say, and this is bigger than the United States, this is worldwide. And Donald Trump is working for some aspects of that while fighting others. So he's, pissing off a lot of the old, you could call deep state, but he's also working for other aspects because they're all entangled, they all have agreements, but at the same time they all have disagreements too. So it's complex. You can find out more about that on my Patreon if you really want to understand that to a fuller extent. So I don't get the sense that Donald Trump is fully fighting for peace, but is more so engaged in some sort of behind-the-scenes chess game to gain ownership over some sort of technology that has to do with Iran. And so this is what's going on in, I guess you could say June and July. But this Iran either has possession over this or is involved in some way with this. And this basically has to do with technology, is the sense that I was getting. Which is very interesting because I've been saying for a long time now on my Patreon, I've explained it deeply how Ukraine is connected with secret technology, and there's a testing of this secret technology. That's just what comes through over and over, that they are testing secret technology. And I believe this could have to do with AI, but I believe that it's bigger than just AI as well. And also I believe that it's come out in the past where they talked about nukes in Ukraine and whatnot, but I believe that that's kind of a cover-up for other technology that they are actually more interested in. So again, this seems to be playing out in Iran. So I get the sense of, when I was tuning into this and trying to ask to see more about what this is about, what I saw the vision of was a magnifying glass, and I got the term looking glass, which reminds me of a phrase, project looking glass, which then I was reminded of, which is very conspiratorial, if you want to call it conspiracy theory, in the sense that a conspiracy theory is not necessarily false. A theory can be true, and conspiracies, people obviously conspire against each other. So a conspiracy theory is not false, it's just a theory. It's not necessarily true either. It could be true. So don't get it twisted when I call it a conspiracy theory. I'm not saying it's not true. But anyways, the definition when I looked up Project Looking Glass online, and I will read what I found online. It says, there are various conspiracy theories circulating the claim that Project Looking Glass refers to a top secret time viewing machine allegedly built using recovered alien technology or ancient artifacts. Now this is very interesting to me because I've been saying for a very long time that I get the sense that there is some sort of technology associated with Ukraine that is ET in origin, reverse engineered ET technology. And this could be associated with AI as well, but something more than that, something more than just AI, but AI is involved in it as well. So again, I don't know all the details of what exactly this is that people are fighting over. Again, it's more than that. It's resources, etc., and domination over the world, which I have written about on my Patreon page recently. But also there is this secret technology involved. So if you have any thoughts about what that may be, please share in the comments. Give this video a thumbs up as well if you've watched it this far and appreciate me putting this information out for free. You can subscribe for monthly predictions every month before they happen. And back to some more world news, some visions I had. I saw explosions. I got the sense of explosions, again, similar to last month, but I got the sense that this was kind of a bigger deal, like actually more disruptive, like real destruction, as opposed to more like mental, intellectual concepts of it. This was like actual, real destruction going on, and I got the sense that this was around Japan. Now, sometimes I get general areas, and it's not really specific, and it can just be like a general kind of area around there. So I got the sense of Japan, and it felt like one of those kind of smaller places like Japan. It basically looks like an island on the world map, but it could be Taiwan too. That's very possible that it could just be that general area being attacked by China, which is a kind of a logical conclusion that I have drawn as a possibility of what that could be about. But I also got Japan in particular, so there could be some sort of explosions in Japan, or something of concern that people need to watch out for. I got specifically that people in that general area of the world, if you are there, it may be wise to stock up on some supplies of food and water. And I specifically got the image of canned soup. Canned soup being something that could be beneficial. I believe that's because it has food and water in it, and it's kind of serving both of those needs at once. Of course, canned soup is not something I generally think is very healthy, unfortunately, but it is good to have as a backup. Unfortunately, a lot of nutrients does actually degrade in canned soup as it sits, believe it or not. And it also has BPA, which is a hormone disruptor and not good. Also, even if it is BPA free, it's still, instead of having BPA, it's going to have BPS and phthalates, which are, I would say, equally as bad as BPA, despite what people may have you believe. So those are not necessarily the best food, but they're good to have around in case of running out of food. You're better off eating that than starving, that's for sure. One thing I do is I consume a supplement called calcium D-glucarate, and calcium D-glucarate will help detox the body from BPA and a lot of the chemicals from plastics and a lot of just toxins in general. It will help your body get rid of them rather than re-uptaking them, because a lot of the times your body is trying to detox, but the toxins will just be reabsorbed back into your body. And this is a supplement that really gets rid of that and really can help men raise their testosterone levels. I just had mine checked and I was very high for my age, actually. And I think calcium D-glucarate is very helpful in creating that, as well as physical exercise, obviously. Anyways, back to July for Bitcoin. For Bitcoin, as I said previously, for a long time now, maybe over a year or so, I've been seeing July being a big month, July 2025, of Bitcoin going up a bunch and coming down a bunch. Again, as time has moved along, I see it being a little bit less of a large spike and large downward motion followed by that, and more so of just volatility in general. I don't see too much of a downward motion for July, although I do sense downward motion coming up. And it seems to me as though this is more likely to happen in August, and I've also been saying for probably like 6 months now that there could be a flash crash in August. Now, more recently, that flash crash seems less of a flash and more of just a downward movement that stays down for a little bit longer, possibly into September as well. We could see this downward motion. And actually, I'm expecting Bitcoin to probably be around 70K again by October, if not sooner, before it looks like things will start to recover. So a little bit more drawn out than I had previously seen for this downward motion. But that's how things shift and change as we get closer to those time periods. Regardless, the time periods are still the time periods. July and August still seem to hold as important times to be cautious with, I guess, Bitcoin. Could be a good time to potentially buy some at a lower price before it starts to get better. But then again, in 2026, as I've been saying for, again, over a year or so now, maybe 2 years, 2026 to 2027, basically the second half of 2026 to the first part of 2027 looks like it could be very bad for Bitcoin, and this has recently been echoed by other people, other remote viewers and psychics on the internet I've become aware of recently are starting to say the same thing, that there's going to be a major crash for Bitcoin during that time. So I do believe that 2026, somewhere around the second half to the beginning of 2027, is probably, it might be good to have a little cash on the side and not be fully invested in Bitcoin during that time. Although, if you are, don't worry about it if you're for the long term, because I do see it going back up, especially around 2030, and my long-term vision for Bitcoin is that it will go up a lot around 2040, or continuously going up until 2040. And then it may start to have a little trouble around there, but 2040, I get the sense that Bitcoin could go all the way up to 800K around 2040. Again, of course, the future is malleable, and numbers in particular are especially malleable, but the general direction of things is, it may fluctuate a little bit, but generally speaking, it looks pretty good. 800K, that's a pretty good number. That is not necessarily where it will go, but it seems as though it will go somewhere around there in that general direction. So if you want to see more Bitcoin predictions and hundreds of different altcoin predictions that I've done on my Patreon page, you can always join there. And you can always request, if there's a coin that is not already on the list, you can request it and I will add it to my list and do a prediction for that coin for usually up until it looks like it crashes, which is usually around the year 2050, where it seems that most crypto coins crash. So something, and you can read about the year 2050 and beyond on my Patreon page if you want to understand what's going on there. But anyways, back to July. Confusing situation emerging is the sense that I got about July, where U.S. citizens are confused and not sure what to believe. So there is some trickery going on. It seems there will be multiple false narratives competing with each other. So our minds like to think there's a right answer and a correct answer, and there's a good and a bad. And so when there are two ideas competing with each other, we're likely to be like, this one's wrong, therefore this answer's right. But what if both answers are wrong? That's the sense that I'm getting here, is that there are multiple false narratives being pushed in July about what's really going on in the world, and all of these are false narratives being pushed for political purposes. And somehow I got the sense of China being involved with all of this, and it seems as though the sense that I get is that China could actually have some sort of say in a very roundabout way about how this is being portrayed. Not that China is the one dictating it or being like, oh yeah, we want you to tell the citizens or tell the world this, but more so that the way that these narratives are being pushed is taking something that behind the scenes on some deep level there is some slight agreement and cooperation going on, even though the US and China are opposed to each other. And the best metaphor I can think of for this is think of like a boxing match, right? So in a boxing match, you're trying to defeat your opponent, obviously. But regardless, you're still following rules. In a boxing match, you're not going to kick someone's groin, for example. So there are agreements even though they're fighting each other. And this is one of those slight agreements. Again, it's kind of like the House of Cards, where Donald Trump can't necessarily say what's going on here because he's part of that House of Cards, even if he disagrees with what's going on. So this could be the same situation, or it could be a different situation. I'm not sure, but this is just what was coming up for July. Multiple narratives, and I believe that this will be multiple narratives around the situation that I was speaking of previously with Donald Trump. I do get the sense that this is due to desperate attempts to regain power that the elite know they are not able to hold on to anymore. And this is actually a really good sign for humanity, because I see a lot of the old systems falling apart, people waking up, people being able to see through things more clearly. But because of that, there are a lot of desperate attempts to stop that from happening. Or these desperate attempts are playing out. So there's a lot of desperation in the world. And people may see that and think that the world is getting worse. But it's because those who are secretly corrupt are basically playing their last cards. This isn't going to end in July. Unfortunately, I get the sense that this is going to continue into 2026 and a little bit into 2027, but I see 2027 being kind of where things really start to, the tables turn, so to speak. Let's see here. So a lot of this, a lot of these situations of desperate lashing out are going to be associated with what's going on with Donald Trump on the world stage. And it is a stage because it's not really what's going on. Again, false narratives. So these false ideas of what people have said in the past, political narratives or stories or opinions, they're going to start falling apart under scrutiny as July proceeds. So my overall sense is that the official narratives of the past will crumble, but also the new official official narratives of July should not be trusted because it is a political stage. And I say the word stage intentionally. On more of a personal level, energetically for July, I get the sense that the truth is going to be coming out within people and their expression of themselves and who they really are. The feeling of carrying on an inauthentic identity from the past, well, we won't really tolerate ourselves doing that anymore. And it's going to feel kind of like the energy of the month is like a now or never, like you need to stop doing this. It's not so much never. It may feel like now or never, but it's more so like a now, like right now, you're going to start being more of your true self, and this will play out in personal relationships, especially with the sense of the heart. I really get the sense of the heart very strongly here, like wearing your heart on your sleeve type of situation. But it's not so much wearing your heart on your sleeve in the sense of being sensitive, but more so about being proud and having a sense of boldness to really be who you are and show your heart to the world, which is actually a very bold thing to do. So you may actually feel a little bit more pride about the things that you would have previously kept to yourself and felt maybe inappropriate or not vibing with society around you. So many of the old control mechanisms that are no longer serving us will be melting away in July. So July is a very powerful month. It's kind of associated with summer, and in a way I feel that that's the perfect metaphor, is the sun comes out and just melts away all the old energy, and that's really just what's coming out for July. You will have a newer, bolder version of your true expression. Openness and honesty are highlighted, but especially with this warrior spirit type of vibe, where you could say people are going to be drawn to live more impeccably. That is kind of an uncommon word, but if you've ever read Carlos Castaneda, you probably recognize that word. But basically what I mean by that, and I'm not saying Carlos Castaneda's work is perfect by any means, but it's a interesting concept. But basically it just means living with no excuses, living to the best of your ability within your circumstances, and not faltering to your excuses or laziness or even being controlled by external energies that are not your true authentic self. In other words, being in alignment with your truth. And that is going to be a very powerful energy for July. At this point, I always like to ask, what is good for the month? What is bad for the month? What came through for being good for the month was, this is a great month for reaching new heights. This is a great month for pushing through, especially to reach new levels of experience that have previously not been attained. So this is a breakthrough month, you could say, for people energetically on a personal level. So being honest about what you want in life and collaborating with those who are able to resonate with that is going to be very much so positive and good for the month of July, as well as anyone who resonates with your personal ambitions. So I asked, what is bad for the month of July? What came up was getting too intoxicated. So it may be a good time to watch your alcohol consumption or whatever else it may be. Just, don't get carried away It's good to have a little break in between is also the sense that I get about that. But at the same time, it's a good month to have fun too, is what I'm getting. So, you don't have to be super strict either. Just watch yourself a little bit with that aspect of things. I also get the sense that this month coming up in July is bad for being overly social in the way that you can lose yourself to the group and not really be in alignment with your truth, with your personal ambitions. So being kind of too open in a way where you're not aligned with yourself, that can be a challenge in July. Um, I also got the sense of lottery tickets as something to avoid. So this seems to me, this could be literal. You could take it literally, sure. But I would also take it metaphorically to represent that just aimless ambition, like just aimlessly, like, oh, I want money or I want this or just kind of chasing your luck is not the best way to go through it, because this is very much so about really funneling your intention into something and building something and working towards something, not just taking a gamble. So I guess don't take gambles, don't put all your ambition into a gamble. Instead, put your ambition into building your way up slowly and working there. It's a great month for that energetically. That is for sure. What else? Being stubborn. Being stubborn, that's generally not good. But especially for July, being stubborn in the sense of being out of the loop with other people. So it's kind of, there's a lot of social energy for July. You don't want to get absorbed by it and melt into the crowd and lose sense of yourself. And at the same time, you don't want to avoid the crowd and become kind of stubbornly individualistic and ignoring what's going on, because there's going to be a lot of information hitting you, coming your way. And it's good not to be too absorbed into it and carried away by it, but it's also important to acknowledge it and be aware of what's going on. So, balance that energy, in other words. The advice that I got for the month is, well, this is simple, but the words that came through were, do what you need to do, but do it in a way as fun as possible. So it's a good month for having fun, chasing your joy, things of that. I wrote, the other thing that came through was connect with others, seek joy above all else, because our long-term plans may change rapidly in July, with a lot of new information coming our way and new ways of looking at the world. Now, I do want to mention really quickly here that I am going to be teaching a new psychic meditation course starting August 3rd, and I will have a link below this video to that, of course. So if you want to learn the techniques to become more aware of your own energy and external energies around you, which then can lead you to the next class if you want to go further, which is how to read. And actually, I will be teaching people how I give people psychic readings using these techniques, and more. But the basic foundation is within the psychic meditation course. So the first class is actually free, so you can check that out in the link below to have a free class and see how it goes for you. And you can continue if you want to. I would like to also mention some of the things that I've been seeing about the world in general, not just for July, but on my Patreon page, I've been posting a good amount about Israel, and I was getting the sense that Israel could actually be at war until around 2027 or so, unfortunately, and that this is going to continue on. I do get the sense, and this is all stuff I've posted on my Patreon. I'm just going to skim through some of the highlights, and if you want to know more, you can join my Patreon for a free trial, actually, and you can cancel the trial 6 or 7 days into it and not get charged at all. And you can join for free without a trial and have access to my free content. Or you can join as a paid member and have access to all of my blind readings, meaning I don't know who I'm reading until after I'm done doing the reading, which is always interesting. I'll explain more later. But anyways, the news coming up, or what's going on around the world, I do get the sense that Iran may attack the US eventually, but I don't get the sense that it's going to do much damage to the US. So I don't really think it's going to be much of a big deal. However, there's something interesting going on behind the scenes within all of that. And what was showing up for me is that Iran has been manipulated into its current position against Israel by a hidden hand, which is not of their own. And I sense that also China will eventually be, not that China is necessarily the one behind this, I get it's actually more of a Western influence, but anyways, China will be giving a lot of weapons to Iran in the future, is what I was seeing. I did predict previously that Donald Trump, if he did attack Iran, he would disengage immediately so as to not start World War III. And I was also seeing that this will not lead to any immediate escalation. In some sense, that is what we've seen, and in another sense, that is kind of an ongoing prediction as well. I did see Israel suffering greatly, much more than would be expected, despite the expectation of their Iron Dome stopping many of the missiles. We have seen that happening, and I did get the sense, and I do get the sense, that Israel is going to be suffering pretty badly, actually. But ultimately, as I've been saying for a long time, I do still see Israel winning overall in the long term. In some sense, they are paying a little bit currently, though. You can read more about that on my Patreon page if you want. Some other things that I mentioned on my Patreon page recently that are worth noting about the state of the world. And some of you may or may not follow Michael Salla, but Michael Salla talks about the white hats and how they're, giving or freeing humanity and working to expose the ET situation going on the planet. But anyways, he has come out very recently talking about how the white hats that are working to free humanity are not actually working for humanity, but, not entirely working strictly for humanity, but instead they're working for humanity in order to defeat their own enemies, which is what I've been saying about the white and black side of things being oversimplified. And he is now starting to agree with what I've been saying, which is that it's much more complicated than there just being black hats and white hats. Even the white hats are a little self-interested. So I've written a lot more about this on my Patreon page, which you can join and see for free with the 7-day free trial. Also, I've done some blind readings recently, meaning what I do is I assign a 6-digit number to hundreds of different names that people have requested that I do readings on, and names that I've picked myself to throw in there and scramble with these different numbers. I pick a random number. I don't see what name is associated with it. I just have the number, and this is what remote viewers do too, and I just do a reading on that. And then after I've done the reading, I look up on my list. I actually use AI to do this to help me figure out what name was associated with that number, and then I know who the reading was about. Recently, I've done one on Henry Kissinger and Tony Rodriguez, who is a person who makes claims about being part of the secret space program, which involves some far out there information about, well, being on other planets, being a slave to a Nazi breakaway civilization, which may or may not exactly live in the exact same version of, well, our timeline, you could say, a different reality potentially. But regardless, he was part of that, according to him, and I'm not going to give it all away, but I will say that there definitely seems to be some truth from what I was getting from him in the blind reading, not knowing who he was. And I do that for the purpose of making sure that my own preconceived opinions about these people don't override the actual information coming through the reading, which is something that happens to all of us. All psychics will, to some degree, have their own opinions and filter through the information coming through to them. So I use this technique to try and avoid that as much as possible, to be as objective as I can. And I've learned a lot about the world by doing this. So I also talked about how psychedelics can influence energy and why I don't smoke weed myself. And of course, I also have lots of information on Donald Trump and the world situation going on, so you can go and check out my blind readings on Donald Trump as well, which I have multiple of. And I have lots of information on my Patreon, so check that out. Anyways, this is going to be an interesting month for July. Very, very charged and transformative. August also feels like it has a lot of that energy heading into it. And then around September or so, it feels as though things, you could say, normalize to some extent, or you could say that there's less intensity to the shifting of energies. Not that it's going to go away, but that it won't be quite as intense as July and August. And that is my psychic prediction video for July 2025. Thank you for watching. Give this video a thumbs up. Leave a comment down below. Subscribe if you have not. And thank you for watching. Have a great day.